Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. No matter what time of zone you are in, I would love to welcome you into my little discussion about the digital dilemma that parents face. But of course, you probably want to know who I am. I'm Kyria Collada, a former television media journalist and currently an educator uh, with my own organization. Now, today's topic is the digital dilemma, and this is in regards to the opposite end of the spectrum, which is getting kids to read physical books. It's challenging, absolutely. And of course, there are books on their devices, which in theory makes it much easier for them to consume. But do they really consume them on their devices? Let's have a little chat about it. So, um, as we move forward, I do want to make sure that I encourage you to actively participate and feel free to share any ideas, any inspirational moments, any ahas. And of course, there's going to be time for questions at the end. So we'll get to the questions, but definitely post them if you have them. Now we're going to get into the main topic, and I'm going to look down at my notes a few times so that way I can keep on track, because I'm keeping this conversation to 30 minutes, which is really hard for me because I love to talk, and I love to talk about the different ways that you can bring books to life for your kids so they will actually want to read books no matter the format that they have the books in. So let's jump in here. Okay. The term digital dilemma that I'm talking about here really reflects the challenges that our young readers are facing when they need to balance their time between devices and, these old-fashioned things, books. So, how do they do that? Well, of course, they don't do it by themselves. So recent statistics indicate that the average screen time for a child has increased over the past decade, and it is at around about 6 hours per day. Now, please keep in mind that is 6 hours outside of school time. Our schools are now dependent on devices more and more. They are no longer headed off to the little computer lab and enjoying an hour of screen time, playing Reader Rabbit or any of those old things, Oregon Trail. No. I mean, they may be playing versions of that today in the classroom, but the computers are now at their desk. They're actually looking at a screen on the wall instead of a chalkboard, and instead of a whiteboard, it is now usually some kind of screen itself. So screen time is 6 hours outside of school. Let that sink in for a moment. 6 hours of screen time outside of school. How long is your child awake during the day? Makes you think. Now, that is a day, not a week, not a month, a day. 6 hours a day of screen time. And of course, that does depend on the age of your child and when they're going to bed. This is an average, and we're going to do some talkings about averages and some correlations, but that may not be exactly what's happening in your household. But keep in mind that screen time is also happening at school, not just at home. I love, as an educator that works remotely with kids, I love to use Class Dojo. And that has great opportunities for them to interact with their screens. And we can use it in a powerful way to enhance their learning abilities. But it's another screen time opportunity. And that's something else we'll talk about, is the quality of the screen time matters. Now, today, we're just talking about getting kids back to reading. And again, the device doesn't matter. If it's a physical book or if it's a digital book, that doesn't matter. It's about getting them reading. So that's going to be where we're going to focus today. Other videos in the future and other webinars, we will talk about the quality time on devices versus playtime, what we used to do at the parks and go outside and just wander around and have fun unsupervised. To some extent on the digital world, yes, we will do that. So the research over the past decade has shown that there is a decline in the reading rates among young children, and it's significantly going down. So the study in 2019, so this is pre-COVID, when we were less dependent on screens for a great many things, revealed the decline in leisure reading. So reading completely for pleasure. The choice to pick up a book had already started to significantly decline. So we're not going to jump into the correlation, maybe the causation. We don't want to use that thought process. However, we also don't want to use the wait and see approach either. We want to be more proactive. So we want to think about what is the allure for the immediate moment of the visually enriched content on the screens that's often overshadowing all of the little pieces of paper folded inside of books. So what can we do to get kids to want to read? It's really a lot easier than you think, but it does take work on your part as the parent. But why does this all matter? Why do we need to help kids discover reading for enjoyment now more than ever? Well, neuroscientific research is suggesting that excessive amounts of screen time can reduce a child's attention span. That is where importance really needs to be placed. There's a little bit about that whole touching a book, turning the pages, waiting for the story to unfold, and the brain processing. All of that is part of that research, and those are important elements. This is also where crafts, coloring, drawing, and writing with pencils all become very critical elements that should be something that is part of a child's everyday life. On top of that, the children's attention span also impacts their ability to engage with longer text. And when they have difficulty engaging in longer text, then we start to have difficulty in comprehending complex narratives. I love a good mystery. I don't know about you, but if they can't understand complex narratives, how are they ever going to solve a mystery? Okay, so it kind of went off on a little moment there, but really let's think about that. If they can't understand complex narratives, that means they have difficulty with problem solving skills. That's life. Every day, life presents problems. And we need to understand the complex narratives that are going on around us. And books provide lessons for children to help them learn the skills to build up their brain for that. Because they have limited life experience, but they can consume lots of books. Movies, TV shows, and YouTube videos don't really have complex narratives. And when they do, they're usually not age appropriate. And they're usually solved in under 2 hours, which makes it not significantly complex and really does a lot of hand holding. So that impacts significantly a child's ability to then be able to engage with that complex narrative and decipher and comprehend it. So now, how do we balance the equation in our home and in the classroom? Just a couple of things. And of course, during questions, we'll talk about a lot of other ideas. But right now, you can institute reading hours at home. Some devices even let you, or not let you, but have parental controls on it so that they have to read a book before they can play a game. Without reading the book, they can't get past that screen. So there are tools available that you can use right now on your devices to set up so they can pay the price first. Let's just say it that way. But instituting some kind of reading hours is really helpful. And this can be family reading time. This could be, poet tea time. Or you can just do a reading tea time, or just Saturday afternoons. Everybody spends an hour reading. again, it's all about you and your guidance for your family. You get to make the decision on how you want to institute it, but there's a million ideas of how to have reading time at home as a family. Again, you lead by example. Now, for the tech end of things, besides using apps, I highly recommend using single purpose devices. I know the multi purpose devices are a thing. We love them. I know that. But the multi purpose devices allow kids the opportunity to creatively get around our rules. Now, we do want to encourage some of that creativity, definitely. But we don't want it always to be available. So having like a Kindle e-reader, just a regular basic simple one with no internet connection as far as getting to a website. It can get to the Kindle store and that's it. That is the type of device you want if you're going to have them reading. If you put them on like an Amazon Fire tablet or an iPad where they can get ebooks and they have a plethora of them available to them, not always good quality, mind you, but they have that available to them, they could still just wander off and play a game instead, or watch a YouTube video, or whatever videos are on that device, like on the Fire tablet from Amazon Prime. So you want to think about single purpose or dual purpose devices. Reduce what your devices can do, because that's going to offer you more power in the long run. And you can also check them out in your home library. So if the kiddos want to, you have a nice high place for the devices, even maybe locked, depending on how creative your kiddos are, and they can check it out based on time read, chores completed, homework done, and scores at school. All of those things can contribute to time they get with these devices that are multi-purpose. Now, to get books to be exciting, you really want kids to think about books in a whole process, a whole experience. And I have a little acronym for it, of course. And it really came from the fact that a lot of my students and their parents were just like, Miss Kyria, how do you make books come to life like you do? And actually, as I was starting to write the book about this, which I'm currently writing, my son and I were talking about it, and he was like, yeah, Mom, how did you make me actually want to read? I really wasn't into it. Keep in mind, he'd been reading since he was 2, so, he could read, but was he doing it for leisure, for enjoyment? Apparently not before I figured out how to bring books to life. But it didn't start with him and bringing books to life for him. It started with my own desires to bring books to life for me. I have a very vivid imagination and I apparently apply it quite differently than other people. So I'm going to give you my acronym, LIFE, bringing books to life. And the first one is the L. L is for the learn and it is for the listen. Now, the listen could be you are listening to the audiobooks, but more importantly, you are listening to yourself and your opinion, or your child and their opinion about the books that they're picking up. The learn, of course, is just a learn. Like you can learn lots of things from books. One of the really important things about having kids read is they learn grammar naturally through reading. And the more they read, the more their grammar improves, especially when we're talking about present tense, past tense, and future tense stuff. Kids struggle with that a lot. But the kids who read more and comprehend what they're reading do much better with the tenses. So it's really important to get them reading as much as you can. And just because your student or your child can read lots of words does not mean we need to jump into chapter books. Take it slow, take it easy, and allow them just to consume the words, no matter the the size of the book. Make sure that it is cognitively appropriate and emotionally appropriate for them, as well as vocabulary appropriate. Those are the important factors before we look at page numbers and chapter counts. Those two things should not matter in the enjoyment aspect of a book. Page numbers and chapter numbers don't matter. Word count doesn't really matter in the long run. What matters is consuming and the learning that has happened through consuming the words. So picture books are awesome. And most picture books are written in a format that is designed for adults to read it to a child. So they have really tough words and they're going to need your help reading it. Okay, now we'll get on further here with my life. And again, I had to check my notes here. So one of the things that you want to do, remember this was the listening part, listening to what they're thinking, is to listen to their feedback about the picture, the cover, the illustration. Yes, I am saying judge a book by its cover. Absolutely. If your kiddo doesn't like the cover, then you need to wonder why. And that's the listening. So ask the questions and listen to the answers. And then before we reject the book, we take a peek inside. But again, we had to hear the objection first and then look inside and see what's going on and see if we still object based on what we see inside. So that is the L for life. Listen, and then you want to look and listen. Okay. Now the I for my life acronym is imagine and inquire. I know we did some questioning already, but this is a little different. So we're going to talk a lot about imagining what's going on. What do you see when you read this chapter? What are you imagining in your mind? And then where does it go from there? Once you've read the author's words, what's happening after that? So you are helping them think beyond the book. Okay. So this means asking open-ended questions, allowing them to think for themselves, not to answer in a yes or no, because obviously you're not going to get anywhere if they just say yes or they say no and they say, I don't know. There's going to still be a lot of I don't knows, and that's because they still need help thinking and processing and feeling comfortable with their answers. And the only way they're going to do that is by you also potentially answering that question. Now, maybe you didn't read the book. I hope you did, but maybe you didn't. You could talk about how something you saw in this book reminded you of a book you've read, and you can share your answer to your open-ended question so that, again, you are modeling what you would like them to do. And maybe in the beginning, they will use a mirroring technique and answer you based on what you said. But again, you want to start to encourage them to think for themselves and ask them, is there another way you could have thought about it? Is there an opposite point of view? What if you looked at it as if you were the bookshelf in the room in the story? How would you feel then? That changes their thinking and uses their imagination and allows for them to take a perspective that they put on for a moment. Very important. And that allows them to start practicing opinion thinking. Now, the I part can happen any time of day. It can be in the car. It can be at dinner. It could be in the morning while brushing teeth or brushing hair and things like that. It can happen anytime. So the I, again, is to imagine and inquire. So you're going to be talking about the books other times than reading time. So one of my favorites has always been to talk about it during meal times. It's a great conversation point. And of course, when my son was a teenager, so we didn't always read together aloud, but I read the books while he was reading the books, so that way I could keep up. Eventually, I had to move to audiobooks to keep up with him because he was reading so much faster than I was able to, because I was also still reading for my own enjoyment and for my personal development. So, I had two of my own books plus his books. So sometimes I had to get an audiobook. but it allowed for conversation. And it's important to have these conversations because you get to talk about your memories, because these stories will spark things from your past, and it allows you to share your personal values and your family values. It's all kinds of opportunities to touch on things that are important that we don't always make time for. Okay, now the next two are my favorites, absolute favorites. The first one is the F, F for fun and feel. So fun, that's the fun stuff. That's the making crafts and the cooking and incorporating all kinds of little things that you can imagine that are fun related to the story. You're going to use the books as launching pads. My favorite series for that is Magic Tree House because you can just jump into so many different topics, from science to history to creative writing because of the rhymes, and magic, and then mythology and folklore. All that stuff is all covered in all of those. So it's a great launch pad. But any book, it can be a launch pad for fun and for feel. So feel, that's your feelings, that's your emotions. That's talking about the different things that are happening and how the different characters are feeling and why they're feeling that way. And how would you feel if you were that character? How would you feel if you were witnessing that situation, but you weren't one of those characters? All of that stuff. This builds up great opportunities for identifying emotions as well as empathy. Great opportunity for that. Now, the fun. We've got the crafting, we've got the cooking, and we can do mini adventures, things like that. All this hands-on stuff that does a lot for brain development, which was a different topic for another webinar. Now, I'm excited for E because I really love E. E is the true magic in bringing a book to life. The others are great, and they do bring the words off the pages. But this is where the life part really happens. And it is extend and explore. Explore. Yes. Okay. So you're going to look for ways to extend the story's themes, the things that are happening in the story, and how you can extend them into real life. So we'll use Magic Tree House as one of the launch pads for that. And Mummies in the Morning. Then we're going to go with that one. It's one of my favorites, absolutely, because I love archaeology and I love Egyptian history and all that. It's magical in my opinion. So we're going to use that for the expand and the explore. I can't jump on a plane to go to Egypt currently. Would love to, but I can't. But I can still explore it in a plethora of ways. There are museum exhibits that travel the country, travel the world, but also travel the US that I can go and see. Now, what if I can't get to a museum that has one of the exhibits that's traveling around? They usually do have museums all over this place in any major metropolitan area. Usually have an Egyptian department there. Universities are great for that as well. They usually have little things in the history department or over in the art department related to that. You just have to do a little bit of research online, talk to some people in real life, and you will find little things in random places. I was in Warrensburg, Missouri, which is a very small university town, and very stunned to see some very cool historical elements at their little college campus. And their art department was absolutely fabulous. So there's an abundance of opportunities no matter the size of the town that you're in. You just have to step out and think a little differently. Now, what if you really can't get to a university campus and there's no museums near you? This is where our devices, we can empower our devices to be useful. Many museums have virtual tours that you can use online, and even Google Maps has some pretty awesome ones. So there are opportunities that you just It takes a little bit of work. This is an awesome opportunity for you to teach your child how to use the internet in a positive way and how to navigate smoothly. So you both can sit down and explore where we're going to go online to check out ancient Egypt. Now, there is the vacation under the volcano. Pompeii, great exhibit on Google Maps where you can wander around there and see stuff. And you can look up at the sky and you look down at the paving stones. You can turn all around. It's got a great 360 view. And then you can zoom into areas and click and things pop open and tell you what they are. It's amazing. So when you navigate that with your child on the internet, they are learning how to navigate the internet, how to find content easily and safely, and that the internet is not for mindless wandering and scrolling, but can help you bring a book to life and to learn something new and to see something you wouldn't normally be able to see without getting on a plane. On the local level, again, in your cities, in your counties, you can also go to monuments and check out what's happening at those monuments and learn those things. You could even reverse the process and find books related to areas near you and then read those and go see those monuments and events and stuff. Most cities and towns now have usually an International Cultural Awareness Week and celebration. So that's a great opportunity. Many areas even have little clubs like the Japanese club and the Korean club and the Egyptian club that host annual events for the public. So there's opportunities. You just have to dig a little bit. So the devices don't have to be bad. You can use them. And you could even help teach your child how to navigate with the devices to bring books to life. And if you have single purpose, one job devices, then those devices empower you as well. That becomes useful instead of being a dilemma. The device is empowering instead of divisive. So it's choices you need to make in how you're going to implement devices in your house going forward from today.